please put your hands together for the wonderful Madhurii. Madhurii, over to you.
Thanks, Sarah. And good morning to everybody wherever you are. And today we're going to be looking at trust as infrastructure, the missing link in creating in the extractives. And you'll be asking why trust as an infrastructure. Now, if you look at it globally, the main reason for most projects shutting down when it comes to community-related issues is usually trust. When you look at the basis, look at the background of what the problem is, you look at it, is lack of trust. And you see that most times there's lack of free, prior, and informed consent. And communities, sorry, my screen. Communities start protesting due to land use, especially indigenous groups. There's the water and environment concerns, you have the unfulfilled promises, and you have the illegal mining crackdowns. So the question you're going to be asking is, when we started building Nigeria's first large-scale gold mine, we didn't just lack a playbook. We inherited a history of mistrust, and yet we were asked to deliver certainty in a system that just had a textbook. And so what do you do when there is no playbook? The world we entered had no large-scale gold mining precedents, regulatory ambiguity. There was also the legacy of mistrust. That's the oil and gas sector in Nigeria, which most people know Nigeria for. And also there was these high community expectations. Now, a lot of people, when they hear Nigeria, they'll say, oh, oil and gas. So interesting, the company I work with is the first large-scale gold mining company in Nigeria. So we didn't have any precedents at all. So basically, I could tell you that we're just basically scrambling in the dark. And can you see my screen clearly?
Yeah, we can see it.
I'm just going to mention that I'm actually at work, so I'll have people probably coming in and disrupting or stopping by once or twice. So please, apologies for that. And so the question is, where did this uncertainty come from? Unfortunately, we had inherited a huge risk from the oil sector. So once they hear mining, they don't care if it's gold mining, oil mining. Mining, as far as the indigenes were concerned, is mining, as far as they're concerned. And like I said, we had inherited that risk. And so we didn't start from zero in the organization. We started from basic mistrust. So you're coming in and you're telling someone, and I'm talking about precedents of even just exploration. You're telling someone you want to explore and you bring a big rig in there. Of course, the person is going to say, no, you're not exploring, because their understanding of exploration is just someone taking an auger and coming in, or just doing like soil and stream sediment sampling. So we had that mistrust. And then after that, there was also the expectations. And then there were the perceptions that were shaped by past harms of the, let me not use the word illegal mining, but small scale mining and artisanal mining, which left a devastation on a lot of land. So we now realize that the risk wasn't technical, basically, for the organization. It was more relational. And what did we have to do? There was no existing, there were policies. Now, interestingly enough, Nigeria has one of the best, should I say, solid mineral policies in the world. We've got policies, we've got mining acts, we've got regulation, but there was no precedence. So we had to be the, should I say, scapegoats, basically, for this. And so you'll be asking, what is the uncertainty? that precedent was basically the uncertainty. And a lot of organizations internationally also get to experience this. So you have the negative legacy from the oil of gas, that's the Niger Delta, where they had the environmental damage, displacement, poor stakeholder treatment, created widespread mistrust of extractive companies across the country. And then there was also the mistrust beyond the region because of media and information. So we realized that we entered a complex environment and needed to build from scratch, not just, and when I say zero, it's not zero, it was scratch based on the mistrust. That's why you're looking at it as mistrust as the uncertainty here rather than a technical one. So the experience became a significant learning process in building effective ground-up community relations in a new and sensitive sector for us. So I'm going to be using Segilola Resources Operating Limited, which I work with. I've been with the organization for close to 10 years now, and I've been in this industry for over 10 years as an example or a case study. So one thing you need to understand is industry perception matters. And communities often see extractive industries as one. Like I said earlier, negative reputations, it carries over. So earlier in the project, we realized one thing: you need to walk the talk. You can't just talk and not walk. If you don't do that, you'll have a major issue. And like I said, they had a trust deficit upfront. Companies enter into communities with pre-existing mistrust and not a neutral starting point, because there's already a bad precedent for that. We also realized that honesty builds credibility. And one of the major things we did as an organization was to set up a community, should I say, representative forum. A lot of times, what we realized in the oil sector was what they just do is they discuss with just the head of the community. And once he gives a go ahead, everybody's fine. An organization where a nation where the land belongs to the government, it's dicey. Now, in Nigeria, we have a very interesting thing. The land belongs to the government. The asset on the land belongs to the landowner. Or let me rephrase it. The surface land, that's the surface rent, belongs to the state government. The minerals under the soil belongs to the federal government, and the asset on the land belongs to the individual. So you see what kind of dicey situation we're having to deal with here. So you have to deal with multiple stakeholders, and it's quite complex. And then understanding context is very critical, because one misstep and you're having a major issue in your hands. So what did we do? Now, how did we create certainty? We're going to be looking at the uncertainty, the actions we took, and also the certainty outcome. We had to build trust. And the uncertainty in this case was the distrust from our host community. So one of the major things we had to do is have a focus group. After the focus group, before we started anything, we requested that all the 3 communities where we were operating in must provide a list of stakeholders that the company will be liaising with. And in terms of, we had the head of the community, we had the learned in the community, we had the engineers in the community, because of the assumption that a lot of people going into is that because it's a rural area, they do not have people that are learned, which is going to be wrong. So you also have the youth in the community. And let's not forget, always marginalized people, the women and the youth. And interestingly enough, you get to find out at the end of the day that if you take out the women, you have more problems, because they are the ones that can actually cause huge problems for you. When you've had a discussion and you finalize with the male in the community, and the women will come and say, you just had that discussion. Now you need to deal with us. So we realized that you need to ensure that everybody had is sitting at the table, and we understood that cultural governance is not a soft issue, it's actually an operational issue. And if you don't embed it into your system, you have a major problem. And this creates major uncertainties. So the marginalized group, which are the women and the youth, are the people that you end up finding out that they also have major says in these discussions. And so we ended up having to do this strategic integration of traditional leadership. Like I said, the head, the women, even the youths, and even the unlearned, because you also get to learn from them, even if they've not gone to school. Perspective and perception is also very important. Sometimes you find out you're probably proposing what you think they need, and they may not need it. They'll tell you, no, they don't need this. I'll give you an example. So if you don't have a discussion with your stakeholders, some of the things you'll have is you're going into a community and you see a school, and you just assume, oh, I'm going to build them a school because they don't have a school. Or I'm going to build them a hospital because you think they don't have a hospital. What's going to happen is they come back and tell you, we don't need a hospital really. Why? Because they use the local herbs. And over time, over the centuries, they've realized that local herbs, and they have the herbalists, actually works for them better. So you coming and assuming that this is what they need is a different perspective totally. So you need to also recognize the local authority structure. And in Nigeria, you realize that what is applicable in the East is not what is applicable in the West. What's applicable in the Southwest is not what's applicable in the Southwest. We're a country with over 400 ethnic groups. I will give you the culture shock that I had as a Nigerian and a Southwesterner working in Southwest. I'm originally from Lagos, and our project is about over 200 kilometers from Lagos, but it's still in the Southwest. And I came under the assumption that we're all Yorubas, so this shouldn't be a problem. And I realized that our cultures are totally different. Even if we're Yorubas, our traditions, there's similarities, a lot of similarities. Even the language, there is a lot of gap. So those are some of the things we get to realize and we don't realize. So those uncertainties are most likely going to disrupt your activities if you do not acknowledge them, and also ensure that there's practical involvement in the decision making from these people. And then also improving transparency, which was one of the major things we decided to do by getting everybody on the table, was one of the best things I think we also did. And you realize that these things have tangible operational impact at the end of the day. You might think it's something small, but something small might actually cause a major issue for you at the end of the day. Now, you also have the cultural intelligence as a driver. Like I said, you don't just assume. Now, who is these recognized authorities in this area? You have the king, you have the Council of Chiefs, you have the federal government. In fact, let's go from the top. We have the federal government, we have the state governments, and then we have the local governments. Under the local governments, you also have the traditional rulers. That's the king. And I know there's a joke that goes around that says everybody in Nigeria is a king. Interestingly enough, that's actually true, because we have lots of pre-independence. There were lots of multiple tribes, which were all brought under one country. So yes, we do have lots of kings in Nigeria. And so you need to understand these people, and you need to ensure that there's trust. And that trust is not something that you build in just one day. Like I said, if you walk the talk, at the end of the day, you build that trust over time. So, and we realize that trust equals continuity. You do not tell them that you do not agree to development under pressure. If you agree to them under pressure, when you know you can't deliver, you have a major issue at the end of the day. Because you can't go back and say, we're going to have, because in Nigeria, you have this community development agreement that has been the document that has been ensured by the federal government for mining. And with our host communities, this community development agreement is a legal document. And if you do not at every given time, it's in phases, ensure that all the projects are implemented, automatically you are breaking that trust. And once a trust is broken, it's extremely difficult, because what they're going to be doing is referring back to what the precedent that has happened. They say, remember 2 years ago, you did not do this. So you must ensure at every given time that your trust is your bond. They can take your trust, your word. When they say your word is your bond, they can take your word to the bank. And if you say, I'm going to do this now, you make sure you do it. So if you know as an organization you cannot do it, do not agree to it, no matter if you're under pressure. For instance, when we're having discussions on community development agreement, one of the things that they were requesting for was a health center. And some of the questions that you'd start asking is, do you need a health center? Why do you need a health center? Do you have doctors and nurses that are going to manage the health center? Or do you expect I, as an organization, to manage the health center? If that is not done, if you don't have those discussions over time, and you promise, and then they say you promised you were going to get us a health center, but you didn't do it, then you've already broken that trust. That's already a fragmented trust. So you ensure that, because at the end of the day, trust equals continuity. They can call you and say, this is what we want done, and you do it. Engagement equals stability. I'm the community development and stakeholder manager. Every indigene in the community has my phone number. You get calls back to back every day. That's why I said I need to apologize first, because I'm going to be getting calls randomly. You get calls back to back. You get messages. You have some people turn up at site and say they want to see you. You can't turn back, because that engagement, you need to understand, is equal stability. Inclusion equals sustainability. Like I said, the women group, the youth group. So while you are doing development and projects in the community and ensuring that you are engaging with your stakeholders, you need to also realize and understand that every project affected person is a stakeholder. Even as long as they are from that community, they are a stakeholder. As long as they are from that country, they're a stakeholder. So you need to understand and be empathetic about whatever it is you're doing. So this, at the end of the day, ensures reduced disruptions, strong partnership, and long-term success. And I can assure you, I'm speaking from experience. Now, who benefits in terms of when there's uncertainty? No one, because you lose, I lose, everybody lose. And right now, project is up. So ensuring that that partnership is there at every given time is very important. And I've mentioned this already. So you need to ensure that there is visible fairness, and also there's your consistent over time. Can we trust you tomorrow? If we come back today and say, oh, this is what we need to do, can you be trusted? That's very important. If that is not there, you have a major problem. So we ensure that we created visible fairness in everything we do. You can get a call. If you cannot deliver, you communicate and say you cannot deliver. Do not make promises because you're under pressure. So what does certainty look like in practice? Now, by the time certainty, what you refer to as certainties, we now started realizing that communities stop asking questions like what will you take, and asking questions like how do we work together to ensure that this. So you have the next project and they said, what do we do? How do we want us to come in? Because you've built that trust over time. Once you build that trust over time, before you know, you start, interestingly enough, and being the African we are, everybody wants to know your business. They start asking you, how is your father? I hope he's okay. And really, that's the way our environment is. They start asking you, is everything fine? You look tired, you look stressed. And that's when you start knowing that, oh, I've built a relationship. I've built trust. Because when they now find out, sometimes they call you and they tell you, I don't want this thing to stress you. How can we work together? How can we collaborate to ensure that things work smoothly? Because they realize that you're good, they benefit. And you realize that they're good, they benefit at the end of the day. So the big insight here is that trust is not a soft outcome. Rather, it is operational infrastructure. We need to understand that. And once you acknowledge its history, which we did, embed culture in our operation, and also think long, we're also thinking long term, you ensure certainty. The lessons we learned in our project was we need to adapt constantly, because you can go in with a particular option today, and tomorrow they'll tell you, because it worked like this doesn't mean it will work like this. So you can use a particular, should I say, format in one community, and under the assumption that you go to the next one, it's going to work the same way. It may not work, because the people are diverse, people's ideas are diverse, their opinions are diverse, their perceptions are diverse. So you need to adapt constantly. And you can go into a meeting that has a major, huge grievance, and you tell them, this is what top management has said you should do. This is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to do. And then you're going to say that you're thinking that this is what I'm going to communicate to them. And then you get there and realize, I can't communicate this to them. So what you do that day is you just probably listen only. You listen. When you're done, you leave there. And then you request for another meeting the next time. Because if you decide to communicate what the management had asked you to communicate in that first meeting, you may have a problem at the end of the day. So like I said, you need to ensure that you are adapting, because we understood at the end of the day that there's no perfect start, and you keep on listening. Because if you listen, a lot of times you pick things from that. So right now we created certainty as an organization through policies, framework, and compliance, and getting them to understand that there is a need for you to follow policy. There's a need for you to follow a framework, and there's a need for you to comply. If you do not comply, you do not benefit, I do not benefit. And how do you get back to that again? I'm going back to trust. So you should have built those things over time. That's why I said trust as an infrastructure. You need to understand that that infrastructure is very important. And at the end of the day, we realize that people will now feel heard. There's visible leadership. They know where to go to. When it comes to even employment, we have an employment engagement committee. My department is part of it. You have the HR department part of it. We have our contractors also part of it. And we have a group where if there's any grievance related to employment, people communicate there. As I said, trust is very important. Transparency also creates trust. Visibility creates trust. Listening creates trust. And then understanding and mutual respect creates trust. Acknowledging culture and acknowledging history creates trust. You understand that, oh yes, this is what used to happen, but we're here for the long haul. And you need to understand that at the end of the day. I'm going to say basically that my final message is, we didn't build on certainty by removing uncertainty as an organization. We actually build it by showing up consistently within uncertainty. And we realize that in a world of change, certainty is not a system, it is a relationship. Thank you.
Madhurii, absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for that. I've taken so many notes here, things like visible fairness, trust is operational infrastructure, and what you were saying there at the end with regards to we didn't build certainty by removing uncertainty. Absolutely fantastic. Now, there are some questions in the chat for you to hopefully have a look at, but I'm just going to invite everybody to put their hands together for the wonderful Madhurii. Thank you very much. Absolutely brilliant.